Good afternoon. I am going to call to order this regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole for Wednesday, November 6th. My name is Andrea Jenkins, and I am the chair of this committee. With me at the dais are Council members Palmisano, Johnson, Ellison, Borsami, Schrader, Council President Bender, Cunningham, Fletcher, and Cano. Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum of the City Council. And the only business before us today is the receipt of reports from the standing committees on matters to be considered by the full council at our regular meeting this coming Friday. And we will begin with the Budget Committee, chaired by Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are no Budget Committee action items for Friday, but I will mention that this past cycle we received and filed the following department budget presentations from the Convention Center, from the Park Board, from the Civil Rights Office, and from the Mayor's Office. I also want to note that tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. we have our first public hearing. It is the check-in on the Mayor's recommended budget. So that public hearing is for everybody here on Budget Committee, which is 13 council members, to receive what the public has to say at 9:30 tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Palmisano. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Our next committee report is the Economic Development and Regulatory Services Committee. And I believe that report will be given by the Vice Chair, Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Economic Development and Regulatory Services Committee has 5 items that it'll be bringing forward. One is Las Charolas Restaurant, wine and strong beer license. 2 is Lynn Lake Brewery, Sunday sales and limited entertainment license. 3 is the liquor license approvals. 4 is the liquor license renewals. And 5 is an interim lease with Amos Construction for a portion of the Upper Harbor Terminal site. So those are the 5 items, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellison. Are there questions? Are there any questions? The next committee report then would be the Housing Policy and Development Committee, given by the chair, who is not here. So we will hear once again from Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Housing Policy and Development Committee has 8 items that it'll be bringing forward. One is the passage of a resolution authorizing preliminary and final approvals for the issuance of tax-exempt multi-family housing revenue entitlement bonds to 14th and Central project. 2 is a Seward Commons project financing, and there's a whole list of 7 sort of items, subsections within that for the property for properties along Snelling Avenue South. 3 is the Home Program and Neighborhood Stabilization Program income appropriation. 4 is releasing a declaration of restricted covenants from 2413 Monroe Street Northeast. 5 is the release of the conservation easement on 1401 Plymouth Avenue North. 6 is the St. Anthony Mills Apartment Tax Increment Financing District decertification. 7 is the 2019 Emergency Solutions Grant Capital Fund recommendations. And 8 is the Minneapolis 4D Affordable Housing Incentive Program form documents. And I will stand for any questions.
Thank you once again, Councilmember Ellison. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, the next committee report is the Public Health, Environment, Civil Rights, and Engagement Committee. That report will be given by its chair, Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Public Health, Environment, Civil Rights, and Engagement Committee is bringing forward 5 items for approval this Friday. The first is approving council appointments to the Violence Prevention Steering Committee. The second is authorizing a memorandum of understanding with the Natural Resource Defense Council for technical assistance and consulting services provided by the Bloomberg American Cities Climate Challenge. The item number 3 is the passage of a resolution accepting donation from the U.S. Department of State and implemented by World Learning of travel and lodging expenses for Sasha Cotton, Director of Office of Violence Prevention, to participate in Professional Fellows on Demand program in Northern Ireland. The item number 4 is accepting a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice in the amount of $894,346 to provide financial and technical assistance to plan, develop, and implement comprehensive efforts to identify, respond to, treat, and support those impacted by the opioid epidemic. And item number 5 is passage of a resolution accepting a donation from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health for the participation in the Bloomberg American Summit. I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Cunningham. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? I do want to note that we have been joined by Council members Gordon and Council Member Reich. And so our next committee report will be the Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, given by Chair Connell.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. So the Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee has 3 items to bring forward today. Item number 1 is a 2020 fire truck donation to the City of Cuernavaca, Mexico. Item number 2 is a contract amendment with Business Watch International for internet-based pawnbroker and secondhand store tracking services. And item number 3 is a Minnesota Board of Firefighter Training and Education Training Academy reimbursement. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Chair Connell. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, the next committee report is the Transportation and Public Works Committee, and it will be given by Chair Reich.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The committee will be forwarding 11 items. Item 1 is a street repair for a failed location that's listed. Items 2 and 3 regard the assessments and approval for the street layout for Hennepin Avenue reconstruction and the accompanying streetscape improvements. Item 4 and 5 and 6 are contracts and agreements with outside groups to assist in conducting of the work of the department. Item 7 is the South Bridge over Minnehaha Creek project, appropriation increase, amount listed. Item 8 is a sanitary sewer availability charges, appropriation increases. 9 is the levy of various Public Works Department special assessments. And 10 and 11 are accepting the bids for work of the department. I'll stand for any detailed questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Reich. Are there any questions? Seeing no questions, the next committee report is the Ways and Means Committee, and that report will be given by Chair Morsame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Ways and Means Committee brings 12 items for approval on Friday. Item number 1 is the procedures for setting the compensation levels for the mayor and the city council members. Item number 2 is the legal settlement workers' compensation claim. Item number 3 is another legal settlement, and this is a medical claim. Item number 4 is a workers' compensation interest payments related to the Osland decision. Item number 5 is a transfer of funds from the City Coordinator's Office to the Community Planning and Economic Development Department. Item number 6 is a gift acceptance from PolicyLink for staff travel and lodging expenses. Item number 7 is a contract amendment with Guna Electric Inc. For the Convention Center. And this is for the meeting room and ballroom. Item number 8 is a contract amendment with Green Minneapolis for operations of PV Plaza. Item number 9 is a contract amendment with Versicon for warehouse renovation project. Item number 10 is a contract amendment with Adolphson and Peterson Construction for the East Side Storage and Maintenance Facility. Item number 11 is a Capital Long Range Improvement Committee appointments, and this is appointing Mr. Garrett Peterson for seat 11, representing Ward 6, to fill an unexpired 2-year term beginning January 1st, 2019 and ending December 31st, 2020. And the final item, item number 12, is an appointed position in the Civil Rights Department, and this is for the Director of Labor Standards. And I'll be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Warsame, are there any questions? Seeing no questions, the next committee report is the Zoning and Planning Committee report given by Chair Schrader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Zoning and Planning Committee will have 11 items for approval on Friday. The first is the approval of an application for an interim use permit at 51 34th Avenue North and 33 60th North 1st Street. The second is the granting of an appeal for the property of 4736 and 4740 Grand Avenue South. The third is approving the adequacy of the environmental assessment worksheet for the North Loop Green project at 405 and 408 4th Avenue North, as well as 328 and 330 North 4th Street. The fourth is the granting of a waiver for the park dedication fee at the property at 800 West River Parkway. The fifth is the approval of the rezoning at 2800 University Avenue Southeast. The sixth is the approval of a rezoning at 4737 Minnehaha, 4721 and 4737 Minnehaha Avenue. The seventh is the approving of a commemorative street name for between 3rd Avenue South, between 36th Street East and 42nd Street East. The eighth is also a commemorative street name addition for on 4th Avenue South between 36th Street East as well as 42nd Street East. The ninth is the approval of a passage of an ordinance amending, approving the 3-unit buildings in lower intensity districts. And the 10th is a passage of an ordinance for lot combinations in lower intensity zoning districts. And the 11th is the passage of 3 staff directions on the implementation of the Minneapolis 2040 plan. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Chair Schrader. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? I might just note that there are 2 commemorative street names on this zoning and planning agenda, and I'm really happy to be bringing those forward to honor 2 African-American women who have been just stalwart in the Southside community. Ms. Clarissa Rogers Walker, who was one of the co-founders of the Sabanthony Community Center, as well as Leona Q. Newman, who ran the longest running African-American newspaper in the state, the Minneapolis Spokesman and Recorder, for 30 years after its founder and her husband passed away. And I'm happy to say that the Minneapolis Spokesman and Recorder is still going strong 85 years later. And so I would ask my colleagues to support that commemorative renaming on Friday. Our next committee report is the Executive Committee, and that would be given by President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Executive Committee doesn't have any items to forward to the Council this cycle. We did postpone 2 nominations for department directors that were brought forward by the mayor, with not enough time for any of the Executive Committee members to meet with the department heads before that meeting occurred. So they've been postponed until there is time for the council members who serve on that committee to meet with the directors and have a chance to check in. I think any of us would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does anyone have any questions? Councilmember Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I was just curious if there is a timeline for when those reappointments will come back through the council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did discuss this specifically, so they were postponed without a date certain, so they will come back on each agenda until the committee acts on them. I had a proposal for how we would move forward. So chairs of committees likely know that department director reviews are underway now. There was a bit of a delay in the shift with our coordinator leaving. So there's an open, one of those reviews will happen for the 2 directors that were nominated before the next meeting. The other is not scheduled until after the next executive committee meeting. So there's a question, that one will include 4 council members. So there's a question, will the council members be able to find a date that's ahead of time do the committee members want to move forward even if that review hasn't happened? So those are the open questions. And then for the other department head reviews, all of the chairs have been, I hope, contacted by now for the various committees. There might be, health might be still forthcoming. And it would be the chair and the vice chair. And then if it didn't create quorum problems, the council vice president or I, one of the two of us, participating in those reviews. If you have any questions about that, you can talk to me or our interim coordinator.
Thank you. I appreciate that information.
Yeah. Anytime.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a question on that, but something that perhaps I should have brought up during the Ways and Means Committee reading, if that's all right with you.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember.
Yesterday at Ways and Means, there was a lot of conversation about an ordinance being brought forward about council member and mayoral compensation processes. And I know that it is our intent on this council to give really fair consideration of every ordinance, and that we've been doing some work on that more behind the scenes in an effort with our city clerk and with council members Ellison and Jenkins. It feels like perhaps some of this work effort could be best wrapped into the larger body of work for what it means to do fair consideration to an ordinance. So I appreciate my colleagues bringing this to bear about process change now before the end of our term, but I think it would be best to consider this in a way with the other things that we need to consider. So I just wanted to give a heads up that I'm going to make a motion to refer this ordinance back and wrap it into the fair legislative process work that's going on for next year. It would still be done certainly in advance of our fourth year in office, but I think that it would give us some time to address the specifics and especially the mechanics about how something like this would work. So I just wanted to give that heads up to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmisano. Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Gordon.
Well, I can appreciate that, and I'll note that we can certainly look at things that we have in existence now in ordinance and past and incorporate them into some future plans that are coming forward. I would really encourage us to at least put this baseline level of requirement that there's some notice given and that there's some committee process set in place now so that we have this taken care of as a minimum floor, and maybe there's some future improvements that can come up. But I encourage folks to pass the recommendation from the Ways and Means Committee tomorrow. It's a really simple change, and it will prevent something from happening again like happened last time when the council and the mayor's salaries were raised with no notice to anybody as a walk-in item at the last minute.
Thank you, Councilmember Gordon. Are there any other comments? Council President Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the discussion, and I think there's ample way we could improve the transparency and consistency of our legislative process. I do think there's probably a distinction, and I'll follow up with both the authors and Councilmember Palmisano as well. When we're creating a legislative process that's about a new policy change or an ordinance, there's all kinds of factors, including staff time and, working with departments, or perhaps in the future, better staffing the legislative body with legislative staff. Whereas I think this is a very specific change that is specific to one issue that doesn't have so many of those components. So it may be an outlier anyway.
Thank you, Madam President. Are there any other comments, questions? Seeing none. I do want to note that this will be our city attorney, Susan Siegel's last committee of the whole meeting. And we just want to recognize her for her outstanding public service to the city of Minneapolis and its residents. And so on behalf of my colleagues, I want to just say thank you for your service, as well as note that there will be a reception honoring Ms. Siegel's service. I believe it's on Friday, November 8th, from 2 to 4 in City Hall. There may be another reception that will not be in City Hall, but we certainly want to get together and celebrate your service to the city as well as your appointment to the appellate court. So thank you. And seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned.